Welcome everyone to San Francisco Zine Fest 2022. We are finally in person, masked. Glad you're all masked. we were afraid we were going to have to tell a lot of people that, hey, please put on a mask, which we haven't. Maybe one or two people, but they were like, oh, I just forgot. And I was like, great, here you go. Here, and they welcomed the opportunity to put on the mask. You are here for a panel that's called Just Existing is an Act of Protest. As I'm sure many of us have experienced, that just our being in this country, just our being even in the Bay Area, anywhere really, feels like it's an act of protest, feels like it somehow offends people that we exist. And that we could mean a lot of different things. And we're here with a wonderful panel of folks who we'll get to talk to, and they'll tell us more about themselves in a little bit. But before they do, I'm just going to go over some logistics of what's about to happen. I'll do an intro for SF Zine Fest. We'll go over the house rules and expectations. We'll have conversation with the artists. And we'll take questions and comments from the audience after that, and then we'll just kind of close out. San Francisco Zine Fest. It's founded in 2001 as a gathering place for writers and artists from around the world, but especially the Bay Area. A lot of you have tabled with San Francisco Zine Fest before, even been guests of honor in previous years. It's typically held as a one-day festival at the County Fair Building in Golden Gate Park, but after 2 years of virtual fests, we were very naive with those virtual fests because that first year we thought, you know what, we're not in person, but we still want to showcase about 150 artists. But we couldn't showcase them all in one day, so we decided to have 21 consecutive days of virtual events. There's only 5 organizers, guys. There's only 5 of us, and we have full-time jobs. So we were pretty naive, but it worked. It was amazing. So many exhibitors said they had a great time just getting to know each other in our show and tell spaces where 10 exhibitors were showcased at a time, and they got to meet with each other, go into breakout rooms, and just say hi to each other. They got to know us more personally because then we were dealing with them 10 to 1, and it was amazing. Well, after 2 years of that, and last year we only did 9 days, we still hadn't learned our lesson, but we said we could still do 9 days. I think we could do it. Our 22 festival is in person, and it's at a new venue. How do y'all feel about the venue? With applause, please. No, I don't want thumbs up anymore. I want applause. Yeah, it has. We're just glad it's air conditioned because I don't know if you all were around for the heat wave a few years ago in the County Fair Building, and that I had to rent industrial fans, but to rent the industrial fans, I had to rent a truck because I couldn't fit the industrial, and then it didn't really help because it just pushed hot air around everywhere. So we're glad we're here today. We have over 200 artists exhibiting at the festival right now with programming including screen printing and risograph printing, and of course panels and zine making workshops, and of course a Q&A with our guest of honor, Avi Jetter, later on. We have a safer spaces policy for folks who haven't been to SF Zine Fest before or just to a zine festival before. And this is something we review and say at the beginning of all of our events, all of our sessions. So I'm just going to read that off for you. And you will actually see posters for it around the venue space. It's lots of text on it. But it says, we are committed to providing a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of gender, gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, or religion. We will not tolerate harassment at SF Zine Fest events in any form. Individuals violating the Safer Spaces policy may be sanctioned or expelled from the space or the event at the discretion of any SF Zine Fest organizer. That sounds harsh, maybe sounds like a lot, but really it's about respecting people's opinions, beliefs, their differing states of being, and differing points of view. Always get explicit verbal consent before taking someone's photo or crossing other personal boundaries. Be responsible for your actions and be aware that they may have an effect on others regardless of your original intent. A safe and respectful community is everyone's responsibility. Thank you. I've been talking a lot. How are you all feeling?
I just took a photo of you. I'm so sorry I didn't get your consent.
I know, I saw. I'm like, didn't ask. I'm reading this and didn't ask. No. It's all
I
fine.
didn't know yet.
But now you know. What is that? It's I forget who said it. Is it
If you
Maya
don't
Angelou quote?
know, now you know.
Yeah.
That's Biggie Smalls.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm like, wait a minute, it's close enough, but it's if you like, if you don't know, it's fine. But now that you know, like, do better. And I was like, oh, that is true. That's right. And I tell that to my kids all the time. They're like, but I didn't know. And I was like, great, cry now. But no, do better. No, I do not make my kids cry on purpose. They are 5 years old. They will cry a lot. And it's the beginning of the school year. It's the beginning. They are crying a lot. But they're doing okay. I like this. If there was a projector, it would say, conversation guy. That's me. So Anand is a queer South Asian artist, immigrant, writer, and educator based in Oakland. He's currently a kindergarten teacher and one of the organizers for San Francisco Zine Fest. And then he just talks a bit about my work, like how I self-published a book with my friend Lawrence. And that 7 years ago now, wow. But we just wanted to say something because we kept feeling that there weren't enough books about people of color by people of color. So we wrote this book, and then it got really great reviews, and then we both got an agent out of it. And we're like, we're just hanging out, chilling, and wrote this book, and now we have an agent. Wonderful. And then I just tend to write zines, just stories about myself, my family, my mom in particular, and really insecure about my body hair. My kindergartners pointed out all the time. They're like, Mr. V, you have a lot of hair here, but how come you don't have any on your head? I'm like, thank you, 5-year-old, for pointing this out to me again. But really insecure about it. So then for my zine, I decided to take a shirtless pic. So like the front cover is my front and the back cover is my back. And I was like, it's a zine. Not many people will see it. But then it won a couple of awards. And then I was like, oh no, now it's being publicized anywhere, like everywhere. But I'm glad that did happen. Still covered up. That's enough about me. Ajuan, you're up. I'm just going to read about you for what you've submitted. And if I, of course, mispronounce anyone's names, please correct me. Am I saying Ajuan or is it Ajuan? Ajuan, perfect, thank you. Ajuan Mance is a professor of English at Mills College and an instructor in the illustration and comics program at California College of Art. Their illustrations and comics have appeared in several collections, including We're Still Here, which is a winner of the 2019 Ignatz Award for Outstanding Anthology, Drawing Power, which is a winner of the 2020 Eisner Award for Best Anthology, Menopause, a comic treatment, which is a winner of the 2021 Eisner Award for Best Anthology. Okay, you've won a lot of awards. Did you? She votes from Chronicle Books, COVID Chronicles, Comics Anthology, and others. Ajuan is the author and illustrator of the upcoming Living While Black, Portraits of Everyday Resistance. This summer, their 1001 Black Men online sketchbook project was released in book form as 1001 Black Men, Portraits of Masculinity at the Intersections from Stacked Deck Press. Which, yeah, first of all, woo!
It looks so good.
Yeah. Ajuan, where is your table? Where can folks find you?
It is about 4 tables in from the entrance on the left side. So look for me. I'm backlit by the deck, so you'll be able to see my silhouette.
Thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's pretty good. Thank you.
Okay. And then I didn't mention this earlier, but what are everyone's pronouns? I'll start off so I can refer to you all the way you want to be referred to.
I
Okay.
use they, them a lot, but anything that is not trying to make fun of me, I will answer to, pretty much.
Okay. Gaia, what about?
They, them, please.
Okay.
They, them, or she, her.
Okay. Perfect. And mine are he, him. But again, it's a similar thing, but as long as you're referring to me with some form of respect and you're not making fun of me, that is what's appropriate. Gaia WXYZ?
Yes.
Yes, got the pronunciation right. Okay. Is a multimedia creator who specializes in visual art, specifically comics, illustration, paintings, and design. They write and draw autobiographical comics about being Black and queer. Since an early age, art has been the major motivating force in their life, concocting characters and storylines in sketchbooks. Though they have skills in a variety of media, including printmaking, sculpture, photography, installation, and performance art, Gaia has focused their talent to pursue a lifelong dream of becoming an arts educator, teaching the first ever classes on comic art at UC Berkeley. Give it up for Gaia. Yeah, all educators here, right, at this table? We're counting it, we're counting it. You teach with your art.
Can I add that I'm also teaching at CCA this semester? I'm teaching two
gosh.
classes.
Incredible. All right. MariNaomi. Yes, got it. MariNaomi is the award-winning banned book author and illustrator of 9 graphic books, including the upcoming Collage Comics graphic memoir, I Thought You Loved Me. Woo, right there. Oh my gosh. They are the founder and administrator of the Cartoonists of Color, Queer Cartoonists, and the Disabled Cartoonists databases, and an occasional editor, curator, and teacher. Hey, look, teacher is in there. I'm counting it. We were also supposed to have Maia Kobabe, but he could not be here because he said he said down with a nasty cold. But we hope he feels better. But I'm still going to read their profile. Maia Kobabe is the author and illustrator of Gender Queer, a memoir, which won a Stonewall Honor and an Alex Award from the American Library Association in 2020. It was also the #1 most challenged book in the U.S. in 2021. Maia's short comics have been published by The New Yorker, The Nib, The Washington Post, and in many print anthologies. Okay. I've done a lot of talking, so I'm going to pass it off to you all. First question, just how are you feeling, and why did you decide to express yourself in the written form, whether it's written in illustration form, basically?
I'm feeling great to be here. I haven't been at Zine Fest since the extremely hot Zine Fest in Golden Gate Park, and so I'm loving the climate control. I just came to a Zine Fest probably now, it's definitely more than 10 years ago, and maybe more than 15, and I loved what I saw of the work that was produced and the people. I just kind of felt like, ooh, I think these are my people. And so I started trying to collect some of my work into zines and found community and encouragement to take my art into different directions like comics, and I can tell stories that I would never tell in just prose or in just images with a combination of those two things. So most of my zines include images and some words as well, and so it's been really great to be a part of this.
Nice, thank you. Gaia?
So how am I feeling right now? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay.
You can also just expand on that question. It's up to you, however you want to interpret it.
No, thank you. Well, I'm very grateful to be here. I feel a bit overwhelmed because I just had to deal with a family medical emergency, and so I was like going to the hospital yesterday and like picking up keys so I could like walk dogs, and like it's been a lot. But overall, like I'm just extremely humbled and honored to be in the position that I am in my life right now. I still feel a lot of like disbelief around the success that I've been able to attain in such a short period of time. So like I got my grad degree in 2020, and then in 2021 I got the job at Berkeley, and now I'm teaching at my alma mater. So it's just like bam, bam, bam. And like post-pandemic, or like post, because like we're still in it, it's just like really hard to like identify with the positive when there's so much bad stuff, for lack of a better term, going on in the world, you know. But experiences like this, where I get to like come together with people and sort of like honor the things that I have achieved and like reflect on what other people have achieved, helps my brain sort of like integrate that positivity, you know. And Ajuan is someone I've known for years now, and has been super supportive of me. So to sit next to them at a panel is so fantastic. And then MariNaomi, like when I first heard about Comics of Color database, I was just like, why hadn't anybody done this yet? You know, so it's like really great to be here with you as well, because I really admire you a lot. Why comics? For me, it's like such a hard question to answer, because it's like been in my life. Like I said in my bio, like some of my earliest memories are like going to the library and checking out like manga, you know, like Sailor Moon and like Chobits and like random stuff like that. So it's like I've just always loved them and always done them, and like have gone in and out of them being centered in my life, but it just feels really wonderful to have a form of expression that I can keep coming back to, and that I get to witness expand so much. You know, in the course of my life, I've seen the audience, the creators, and the sort of like venues and opportunities just exponentially grow. So why comics? Because it's a vibrant world that I love to be a part of, and want to help other people make them really good too. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yay. I feel a little nervous because this is my first panel since like 2019, and I've been like basically locked up in my house for years. So I'm trying not to get COVID. So honored to be on this panel. This is a kick-ass panel, and I'm just thrilled. And I was so happy to be invited. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
As for where I come from and why I'm doing this, I do a lot of different art. Like, I started out as a little kid wanting to do, like, write novels. And I did that, and I mean, I wrote a few novels, nothing thankfully was published. In the 90s, I discovered underground comics, and it was a specific anthology, Twisted Sisters, by Diane Newman was the editor, and she just passed away a couple of days ago, which I'm very sad about. She also edited Drawing Power, which we're in. And anyway, so that actually book changed my life. It was a bunch of punk rock women writing about their lives, and I'd never seen anything like that. And that kind of gave me permission to start writing about my life and drawing about it. And that was like February 1997 is when I started drawing my first comic, and March was when I finished it. And then that just set me on this weird path of I just had this weird little community and hobby for many, many years until 2009, I got a book deal, and then suddenly, when the book came out in 2011, I had to quit all my day jobs so I could keep up with all the comic stuff, which is really strange, because I never expected it to be a career thing. And now here I am in the Metreon with air conditioning, talking with you amazing folks, and just feeling really grateful that this community exists. And just I've seen so much happen over the years. In 2014, I started the Cartoonists of Color database and the Queer Cartoonist database. 2018, I started the Disabled Cartoonist database, and it's just, I've been watching these communities grow so much. And I mean, they were there, but they were kind of scattershot. People, like a lot of people, including myself, didn't know that the other people existed, and there's thousands of people in these databases. And you know, I don't know how many there were when I started, but like I know that there's a lot of us now, and it's so exciting. I feel like comics is in another golden age where there's just so much happening. And what's exciting about comics and why I love to focus on comics right now, well, for one, that's the thing that took off, but the other is that it's really one of the few art forms where you could do any true pioneering, where you could do something that's actually new. You can with games, and you can with movies and TV, but that's not something that one person can sit down and do very easily. And this is really, you know, as a painter, like, good luck doing something no one's ever done, or as a prose writer, or even a poet. It's really hard. I mean, maybe it could be done, but it's kind of recycling a lot of old ideas. But there's so many things that haven't been done with comics yet, and I'm taking a lot of time up. So
no, this is great. We love.
This is why I'm here.
No, there was something, Gaia, you mentioned earlier about how you know the others and all that, and I feel like we've all been in the same space before. How do you all know each other? Like, have you worked together, or? other than Zine Fest or other places, I feel like there have been other cases where your lives have intersected.
Well, me and Ajuan were the guest of honor at a Zine Fest
Yes.
a number of years ago. I only recently met you. Where was that? You introduced yourself.
It was at a reading, right?
At a reading. Sure, that sounds right.
It was at a comics
Oh,
event.
was it at James Spooner's event?
Yes,
Yes.
it was at that,
Okay.
yeah.
And that was my first public event since the pandemic started, and I was.
But I had seen you before.
Okay.
Like, you're somebody who I was like, oh, maybe I'll meet her one day.
We'll all know each other one day. The longer we stay in the industry, everyone knows everyone.
And then how we met. It wasn't through school. We met
No.
before that.
Was it through, did we meet through that coloring book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met doing a really cool project together called the People of Coloring Project.
Nice.
It's this organization that makes coloring books, and it was honoring a community land trust arrangement that one of our audience members helped put together, actually.
Okay.
I was living at the 23rd Avenue building, and it's a apartment complex that got bought by a community land trust, and to celebrate that, they created a whole comic book. And Ajuan did 2 pages, and I did 2 pages, and then they liked one of my pages so much that I colored it and became the cover of the book. So, yeah, that's how we met. But then we just have like so many common communities. So,
We're all family, really.
pretty much.
That is actually I feel like that is very true for the zine community, where all of us see each other at these festivals. I mean, we may not always see each other outside of it, but we run into each other at different bookstores or at readings or someone else's show or anything. And then there's always that feeling of gratitude and warmth for being in the same space with the same people.
This is our Thanksgiving or some less problematic holiday.
It's the family reunion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've also participated in one of my projects that I did with my first graders during the pandemic, where I decided to interview folks.
That was so weird to be doing something for little children, since most of my stuff's not safe for anyone under like 40.
They were great. The kids got to know where you're from, what your favorite food is, what kind of like a random fact about it was incredible. Thank you for participating in that.
Let me tell you a little kid about sex.
We had that happen last year. For lots of things happening with kindergartens, but I'm just going to briefly go over like one of our projects. So for San Francisco Unified School District, because June is Pride Month, but kids are out of school at that time, so April is our Pride Month. And for that, we were doing a door decorating contest at our school. We have a rainbow club that started for mainly 5th graders and 4th graders, so 9 and 10-year-olds, which at least 15 of them are attending on a weekly basis. It started last year, and they were consistently showing up, and we're like, oh, there's a need for this. They asked for this, and they wanted to make space for it. But I remember for our project, we wanted to learn about a trans person, and then we read a book about a trans character, but then a picture book about it. And then for our door decorating contest, we learned about Marsha P. Johnson. It was like, how do I talk about this part and also leave out the sex working part? But I can, because then Marsha was one of the folks who founded STAR, which was to help houseless youth, queer houseless youth. And I was like, oh yeah, we can definitely focus on that. And the kids got behind that. They were like, yes, kids need to be taken care of. And then they were saying, yeah, go Marsha. I was like, this is beautiful. You're 5-year-olds and you're just all supported this. But yes, any work, all of your work is appropriate for all kids. Yes, just what information we decide to share. They were just happy to know another person and another adult who wanted to talk to them. So it was great. What age group do you all work with usually?
In terms of teaching?
In terms of teaching, let's say.
I teach undergrad and graduate students.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to keep going down the line? Sure.
You can-
So art education is something that I've done a lot throughout the years.
Yeah.
I started off teaching elementary age, like 3rd to 8th in after school programs, and then I worked with like K through 5, and then I worked with some high schoolers. So I've really done the gamut, you know. When as a young person, it's like, well, I don't want to work at Trader Joe's anymore. So like, what else can I do? And after school programs tend to be very understaffed. So they're like, oh, you can do stuff and you're good with kids? Get over here, you know. So I did that for a while. But I just couldn't support myself with it, you know. So then I was in the cannabis industry for many years. And that was fun until it got legalized and it became like working at Target or Trader Joe's all over again. But then, thankfully, I went to grad school. So the fact that I'm teaching at the college level and I'm like barely out of college feels a little weird sometimes. But at the same time, because I've been in the comics world for so long, it's like it doesn't really matter. Even though I'm only 31, I started when I was like 10, so I really do have like 20 years of like accumulated knowledge that I can like help. And actually, one of my students is here today, so thank you for showing up. I really appreciate
Call
that.
him out. Call him out.
Sam's a super talented artist and soon to be animator. So I guess I'm doing something right because they're not like, man, I hate you. I never want to see you again.
They're showing up on a Sunday to see you. You must be a fantastic
I feel
educator.
very blessed.
I'm not a regular teacher.
How are...
I didn't graduate high school. I'm not into education. I mean, I'm into educating myself and mentoring people and helping. I love to help people and to lift people up whenever I can. But teaching is just freaking weird. Like it's weird to like tell people how to learn things, and that's why I didn't like school and why I quit early. And I tried going to college and I've tried taking classes, but every time I do, I feel the same way. I'm just like this, you know, I don't really get a lot out of it. So I've taught twice at CCA for their summer MFA courses, and they had to explain to me what a credit was and what an MFA was and a bachelor. Like I just didn't know all this stuff. And while they, you know, Maia Kobabe was one of my first students, or Kobe, anyway, they were one of my first students. And like, while I definitely got things out of it, I prefer to mentor one-on-one because I feel like everyone needs something different. And I can really focus on people this way. When I'm doing a class of like 20 people, it's just like, it feels like I'm just like tweeting, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like hoping it reaches somebody. You can tell I'm a little jaded because I just read my student evals. And it felt like just reading all my Goodreads reviews in one like sitting. And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't do anything right. But also I'm wonderful for the same reasons I suck. But the lowest grade that I've ever taught was when my young adult series came out. I mostly write for adults, pretty not safe for work stuff, but not porn exactly. But some people might disagree, like people in Katy, Texas, who banned my friggin' book. But the youngest, I think they were probably like young teens or tweens, and I did this workshop, and it was in the Bronx, and like I don't know how to talk to kids. I don't have kids. I never wanted kids. I never wanted to be around kids. And so suddenly I'm in this room full of kids who were like tougher than me, and I'm like, I'm pretty tough, and I'm just like, what the hell? And they're all acting very nonchalant, and clearly they're just there for the snacks. And and that's cool, you know, that's totally cool. So I was teaching them how to draw a comic, and of course no one's following my lead. And luckily there was a librarian who's kind of the babysitter. And at the end of it, I'm like, okay, thanks everyone. And the librarian's like, oh, by the way, you know, this is the author. We probably should have done this in the beginning of the books that you just read. And all of their eyes just popped open, and like the most aloof kid came over and like hugged me.
Aww.
I mean, that sounds cute, but I freaked out. It was non-consensual. And I don't think that, I mean, it was adorable, but also I'm like, oh, what do I do with this? This isn't me. Anyway, but that was my youngest. The end.
Can I just say, like, I was a weird kid growing up. Like, I grew up in South Florida, and they are not particularly queer-friendly there. So when I teach tough kids, it's very triggering because I'm like, oh my God, these kids know that I'm like a freaking dweeb. And like, they're going to tear me to shreds. You know, like I think about, I think about the first scene from, Awkward Black Girl. You know, when she's teaching or like she's trying to teach and they just tear her apart. They're like, why aren't you married? Just like that. Like it inspires so much fear in me that I was like, I should just teach college because at that point they're chilling, you know.
Yes, kids will do that. Kids will tear you apart. I always tell folks, like, high school, I was also a substitute teacher for 3.5 years because I hate myself, I guess. But so high school I found was the easiest, but then I was like, I'm dealing with like 150 kids a day, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. And middle school was the most frustrating because I'm like, I get it. You are calling me a terrorist to my face, but I still don't appreciate this. Not okay. And then elementary school was the toughest, but it was also the most rewarding. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love these hugs. I love these little gross, disgusting kids who like have like boogers stuck on their hair. And I'm like, what is that? And they're like, nothing, what?
And they eat it.
And I'm like, why? I'm talking to you right now. Please don't do that.
Well, I will just mention I did a semester through YBCA at Martin Luther King Academic Middle School in the south part of San Francisco, and I was embedded in an 8th grade social sciences class. And there is an upper limit to how old you can be for students to be mean to you. And so if you walk into a room with white hair, it's a waste of time for students to be mean to you. You're just, and so I actually had a shockingly pleasant experience, you know, with 8th graders. You know, it's a lot. I think there were 4 or 5 classes of 8th graders every Monday. We had an entire day together and created an art project over a semester that ended up at the Yerba Buena Center, which was super fun. But I did worry that they would see me and recognize immediately that I'm soft. I went to a small private school that rewarded non-compliance with expulsion. And so I had never actually had a full frontal 8th grade experience. But I think that, you know, I look very similarly to now, walked in with white hair and they just thought, oh, why waste my time? And so they listened politely sometimes, but no one ever called me any of the names that I thought, that I was expecting, actually. So
Nice.
I had to throw
That's
that
great.
whole list away.
To summarize, yes, kids can be nice. We all know this. We've all had classes where but it can also be awful and give us lots of trauma. Even as adults, they know how to get to us. Well, with all this stuff, and kind of tying into like, with all the stuff that's happening right now with like your books being banned, and Maia's as well, and just things that's happening with women's rights. And of course, trans folks are never really given like any space to even take a breath because of that's how our country is. Do you all feel that there's some sort of obligation as creators, as educators, to make your work be more social and political, or just more informative and educational? We can start off at the other end, since you're gesturing to others.
Oh, dang. Well, I feel like I'm talking too much, so I didn't want to take up that
No,
much space.
you're great.
I always feel like I want to, I've been writing about my abortions for years and years and years, like that's in my first book, and I'm still writing about them. I love them so much. I'm so grateful for them, and everyone should get one. And JK.
Did you bring any copies?
Of, no.
Your work?
No.
No, I should get an abortion. I'm sorry. I didn't mean everyone should get copies of
Did
your
I
book.
bring my abortions?
Can I copy and paste this? Yes, no. Your books about your works about abortion, if you could.
Anyway.
That's going to be edited out, right?
I don't feel an extra push, I don't think, to talk about stuff because I'm always talking about that stuff. I feel like maybe people are listening more, like the things that I was already talking about go viral more frequently. I don't know if that's just because I have a bigger following now or what, or if it's on people's minds. There was a period of time, specifically right after Trump got elected, that I hadn't realized how complacent I was, and probably the most urgent thing I was worried about was getting my friends' pronouns wrong, because I just couldn't get my head around it, and that was my big like existential thing. And then Trump happened, and oh, the days. And right when that happened, I was in the middle of making this series that I was having a super fun time with, called Asian Goth Punks Rule the World! It was in this magazine called Razor Cake, and it was about this little goth girl and her best gay punk friend, and they're just going around and doing crimes and like picking people's pockets and having a good time and taking LSD. And I'm like, yes, people are ready to hear about my death rock days in fictional form. But then I had to draw them all, and that's when stuff started happening in the world that, suddenly everything was newsworthy. And there were a few months at least, or I don't know, they felt like years, but where I just was drawing these, 8 hours a day or whatever, how many hours a day, or I'm inking these cute little comics that I'm just like, I am so worthless to society. What am I doing? But like I'd made this commitment and I couldn't stop. But I'm like, this is, I'm useless. I'm useless. And then I finally kind of made peace with it when I realized that all the TV shows and stuff I was watching were very escapist, and those were the ones that were healing my soul. Even though I was thinking about the news and thinking about like how to make the world better all the time, that was the only thing that was really soothing me, was like the Great British Baking Show and stuff like that. And then I felt better about myself because, these comics were not meant to be any serious anything. They're just meant to be about clothes and boyfriends and stuff. So yes and no.
I have, for a really long time, had I had an art instructor in college who was like an old white guy, Vietnam vet, and he would not take my work seriously because I was and am still an overachiever. So I was in an undergrad program where I was taking classes at 2 different colleges an hour away from each other to get 2 bachelor's degrees. And my academic bachelor's degree was in American studies, so like critical race theory before that was in the mainstream conversation. And so I was just thinking about that stuff all the time, and I wanted my art degree to be for my pleasure, for aesthetic enjoyment, and to hone my craft. And I was in a steel welding class, and I loved it. I loved using the plasma cutter and like the welder, and I loved that. But I was making these like fanciful headdresses and like jewelry pieces and stuff. And during a critique, I brought my work outside, and he's like, well, why is it outside? I'm like, because our classroom's in a shitty basement, and it's like a nice day, and I think my work will look good out here. And he's like, well, if you're not going to take the class seriously, then we won't talk about your work. And they didn't critique my work that day.
Wow.
Later on, I was literally walking to the bathroom, and he like corners me and is like, hey, you got a lot of talent, but I think if you made work about your ethnic issues, it would be a lot more powerful. And I was just like, I dropped out of the art school. I didn't get my BFA. I only got my BA. And so it just makes my blood boil that as an artist of color, as a queer artist, as a black artist, that like people keep trying to push me to do that, because it's like, you're not telling like Chad over there to make art about being a white guy. Like that's not a thing. I make a lot of work that is very like educational, or like sort of like Ajuan actually just clued me into a job, a 14-page comic for a trans man that's sort of like a brief retelling of his life. And I look forward to doing that type of stuff. But I don't want to be pushed into it, like I want to be able to make it all. Like I want to do like the soap opera, polyamorous soap opera, where, it's just like fun and like crazy and delightful. And people will get something out of that. People will learn just through seeing it. It doesn't all have to be so didactic, like this is what it's like to be trans, it's like there's room. And I think it's also a generational thing, because even like the kids that I'm teaching now, they're like, I just want to make stories about black fairies. And I'm like, freaking do it, because that, to me, and like what you were saying, like when we're in these crazy hard times, it's like we don't always want to be reminded of how much everything sucks all the time. So I don't know. I feel very strongly that like if you want to make work that's like instructional and pragmatic, like do that. But please don't try to push artists that are marginalized to create work about that, because we're already living it day to day, and like I don't want to be constantly reminded of it.
Can I speak to that real quickly?
Go right ahead.
I don't want to interrupt. But there was, it's funny that you bring that up because there's a period of time where I really, really wanted to talk about race and no one would let me. My second book, well, actually, it turned out to be my third book, but the second book that I finished, which is called Turning Japanese, and the original, what I had planned to write about was kind of my relationship with my Japanese side. My mom's Japanese and my dad's white guy. And the book was rejected because, basically because it was too ethnic. And so I kind of had to tone it down. Ultimately, the publisher I went with, which was a micropress, like they probably would have been okay with it, but by then I'd already finished the book, the way it was. But originally my vision was to make it more ethnic, because that's what the book was about. By the time that it came out, I think maybe a year or two later, suddenly everyone, that's all they wanted to talk to me about. Like every panel I was invited to was about that identity part. And suddenly I'm like, okay, I did want to talk about it, but now I just want to talk about pen nibs. Can't I just talk about pen nibs and like paper girth, and stuff like that? And that's the thing, unfortunately, what's popular and what people want to hear about and what's talked about. Like right now, everyone wants to talk about book banning and LGBTQ stuff, and I'm happy to talk about that stuff. But again, I really like pens, and I really like talking about just how I'm working in Procreate and how that feels different than all the traditional stuff I've been doing for decades. Like that's what really interests me. I mean, it all interests me, but anyway, my point being, it sucks. We never get to do what we want to do, and once we get to do what we want to do, it's like, but I want to do something else.
Yeah, I almost feel like there was something that I'd read. I mean, folks have been talking about it also, but it's like people of color aren't, or marginalized folks in general, aren't allowed to be themselves. They have to be about a certain identity, even in the books they write or the art they make. It's like, yeah, you did this, but you can't just be writing about going for a walk in the park. There must be some other reason. Maybe there's a white man following you and you as this brown person are running. I was like, no, I like walking in parks. Like I go on hikes. Like that's something people of color do, I think. Like that's not, and they're like, no, there has to be more because you're this. It's like, all right, no, I'm going to step away from you now. I'm going to do my thing.
Justify your ethnicity, please, on this page.
Why are you brown? Please tell us.
It's an interesting, you're talking about walking in the park, and I will say that, if I'm walking in the park, or I live in Oakland, and much of my family, now that my mother has just moved to the Bay Area, live in Alameda, so I'll walk along on the beach in Alameda, and I will say, full disclosure, as I'm walking along the beach and looking at the San Francisco skyline, and I think, it's more beautiful because I am black today. So that is... So it's an interesting relationship to that. Also, but also I think, I'll have students who are African American. I've been a professor of English since 1995, and it doesn't happen that often with black students, but sometimes I'll have students who will, with black students who will say, it is not really my job to explain to whatever student is annoying them on that particular day, to explain to them what it is to be black. And I'll tell them, no, it is not. I am the person who's actually getting paid to explain things about our content that is, I teach African American literature and black feminist theory and black history and stuff like that. So this is my job. My job is to do that, except not to explain what it's like to be black, but to try to address people's questions about our content. And so maybe that shapes part of it. Also, I have a very large black extended family of people. I knew my great-grandmother until I was 17. She died when I was 17. She was born in 1884. Her mother and father were enslaved. And so black history feels extremely immediate to me. And so because of that, I have this kind of Lucille Cliftonian perspective on race, which is, Lucille Clifton, and I wish I could remember the specific quote, but she said basically being black for her is a gift every day, for which she is grateful. And I feel the same way. And so it reflects how I write about race and how I feel about it, which is that it's just, I love African American history and culture the way I've experienced it with deep roots in South Carolina, Maryland, and Delaware. And so, I did a piece called The Bottle Tree at the End of the Universe, and it's this kind of space-agey African-American old woman with a bottle tree, and in every bottle tree is a galaxy. And so, which is super cool to do. If you're working with Photoshop, you can do all kinds of cool special effects. And so all of my art is about, I don't know if I'd say all of my art is about black people, but pretty much all my subjects are black. So if I'm writing about space, outer space, and I'm a huge sci-fi fan, especially in terms of novels and stuff like that, my space characters are black people. And if I'm writing about, I don't know, if I'm doing animation, I'm animating a bunch of black women in an apartment building. And so it's not necessarily that I'm doing a lot of work about race, and so I don't want to feel constrained that I have to kind of capture what is the black experience. You know, I feel like that's a false question, because there are multiplicity of experiences. And as blackness becomes more diasporic in the US, it becomes even less true that there's a black experience. And yet I can decouple that from the fact that when in my own artistic and creative practice, my subjects are almost always black people. For me, my learning curve, and it's moving right along, my learning curve has been drawing people who are not black. Which I think is important, and I have strategies that I could talk about for drawing multi-ethnic groups and this type of thing. But so it's this interesting thing of kind of holding some disdain for people who want me to perform a particular type of black experience, and yet my own line of creative inquiry is into the multiplicity of dimensions of black life and experience, as I owning that it's my own experience that's being reflected in my drawings of everything, and mostly of black people. So it's a very, it's not necessarily what people are looking for if they want us to be what Zora Neale Hurston would call tragically black. This isn't the place to find that in my work. But if you're interested in unexpected images that reflect one individual's experience and being who owns it as such, then I can help. But otherwise, no, I cannot.
I wish you were there when my professor cornered me, so I could just be like, listen to them.
Have you ever?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was just so I was hanging on to every word because I loved that. That was so great. Thank you.
Have you ever had a client request that you draw something blacker? Because that happens to me with Asian stuff sometimes. I guess not.
That has never happened yet, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting. That's pretty outrageous. Yeah.
Pretty gross, yeah. That they said, draw this more Asian American. I'm like, well, this is about as Asian American as you get, because it's autobio and I'm Asian American. Yeah. I sated them by throwing in some cherry blossoms and calling it a day.
I thought you were going to say just increase the line weight. It's look, it's even more because now it's darker. And it's what are you doing? We're almost at 2:00, but I wanted to see if anyone in the audience had any questions before we wrap up. I gave you all a list of 15 or so questions. We'll go through these. I think we went through 3.
I was really excited to talk about my favorite con experience.
Yes, go for it.
Okay, there's a lot of them, and usually involving meeting my heroes, but this one was about meeting Matt Groening, who I'd watched. I was super into The Simpsons all through my 20s, and he came to my table and bought all my books, and I had no idea who he was. I was just trying to find change for him, and then as soon as he left, everyone started buzzing, oh my God, did you see who that was? And I'm like, wait, what? Who was that? And it was him, and as soon as I realized that, I just lost all sanity, and I just chased after him, and I basically just tackled him and hugged him.
Yeah.
And then he came back to my table and we talked for a while, and it was great.
That is an amazing experience. Okay.
But you meet your heroes. The longer that you're in comics, you're always going to meet your heroes. Some of them are amazing, and yeah.
I will say one. I met one of my heroes before I realized that he was one of my heroes. Just here at City View, the Black Comic Arts Festival, Black and Brown Comic Arts Festival happens here
Yeah.
during MLK weekend, and they also have one in Harlem at the Schoenberg Center at the same time. And in 2018, my aunt brought me, she was like, you gotta come check this out. I was like, that sounds like exactly my thing.
Yeah.
And I was checking out all the tables, and there was a table for the CCA MFA in Comics program. And John Jennings was there, and Justin Hall was there, and they have been instrumental in my career advancing. But I didn't know who they were yet. And I had my little sketchbook with me, and I showed it to John, and he was like, this is awesome. Like, you should totally apply to this program. But even if you don't, like, give me your info because I want to mentor you. So that was an incredible experience for me because now he's, you know, big shot, got his own imprint at Abrams and, you know, publishing books from, I hope one day to publish through Megascope, which is the name of the imprint. And so, yeah, you really never know. Like, these types of experiences are so great because it unlocks connections that you don't know where they're going to take you. It's special.
I think it means keep attending zine fests and comic festivals. Keep supporting us. Yeah, great job, everyone. Okay, go on.
And I can share one as well. The late great Alternative Press Expo I attended, and I didn't grow up reading a lot of comics. I tried to read around the edges, you know, but I didn't read a lot of superhero comics. I got turned on to comics in undergrad when I started reading Love and Rockets. That was back in the 1880s and actually the 1980s. And I just fell in love with the art of the Hernandez brothers, especially, you know, both of them I loved. And so at the Alternative Press Expo, Jaime Hernandez came up to my table and bought one of my prints and took a picture with me. And I just thought, well, I think I've achieved all of my goals. Now I can retire. But I still love their work.
He is just a special guy. He's so nice. Like, he's just so nice.
To kind of add on to that, I want to say, what's a recent art or media that you enjoyed and would recommend to us, to the rest of us? Because, I mean, we all consume a lot of things. You said you were consuming The Great British Baking.
Listen to The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay. It was an audiobook that I listened to. It was a very well done audiobook. It takes place in the 80s, and it's basically a group of gay guy friends who, you know, during the AIDS crisis, and it sounds really depressing, and there's definitely depressing parts, but it's so funny and full of life and joy. And, you know, I lived in the 80s and was around, you know, all that, and like I just, you know, so part of it was nostalgic for me, but also part of it was just like, I mean, it's devastating, it's hilarious, it's so well done, so well written. And the audiobook guy, like, is so good that I forgot that it was all being read by one person. Like, he's so good at all the different voices. So that's my big recommendation today.
I don't know if you all have heard of Station 11, but it's a miniseries, I think, on HBO. And it's like a post-apocalyptic Shakespearean narrative that centers around a comic book. It's so good. I was just like, who tapped into my dreams and wrote a script? Because, like, this is the type of thing that I would have written. And it was just really well done. The post-apocalyptic treatment was very cool and unique. And the comic was made by a black woman, too, in the story. So I was just a huge fan of it. So if you haven't seen Station 11, check it out. It's a good series.
Nice.
I spent most of the summer listening to all of the novels of John Scalzi. And I would say, you know, I have a feeling he's one of those writers, people either love him or hate him. I really enjoyed the work. I enjoyed the imagination. But what I also appreciated, you know, as a white cis man who is heterosexual, writes trans characters, queer characters, and characters of color in a way that doesn't feel performative, like, look at what I'm doing. And so I found it very interesting to read. And I also enjoyed the scenarios, the thought experiments that the work represented. For the same reason, I also enjoyed Kat Leigh's Thirsty Mermaids, that has an interesting diversity of characters across gender diversity, race diversity, and is just a really fun story.
That's so cool. He moderated a panel I did years ago, and we became pals. And I'd never read much sci-fi before, so I started reading his books fairly, like, in the last few years. And they're so much fun. And he's like, he's on Twitter, he tweets a lot, and he's so funny, and he's just a lovely person, so.
Oh, that is so cool.
Okay, now that you've talked about other people's work, is there something you're working on now that you would like to share or tell us more about?
I'll go.
Yeah.
This book, well, I just lost my publisher for it, but I just got another publisher for it.
Woo!
And we're about to crowdfund. I think they're going to start around SPX. It's not, you've heard it here first because it's not been announced, but it's Field Mouse Press. And it's a memoir, but it's a collage comics memoir. If anyone wants to take a look, it's pretty freaking weird. It's a memoir, but it's also kind of a mystery. And thank you. I'm really excited about it. Rob Clow, who's the publisher, he's also I met him when he was a critic for the Comics Journal, and I had him read it just as an early reader, and he said, "This is the best thing you've ever done." And when my publisher dropped me, I'm like, "Hey, do you guys want to publish me?" And they said yes, and so now here we are. And yes, so if anyone wants to help crowdfund and make this book possible in the next month, I'll be not sleeping for the month of September. But also I'm just so excited to work with them, and yeah.
What are your social handles or your website that we can follow you on?
MariNaomi.com, cartoonistofcolor.com, queercartoonist.com, disabledcartoonist.com. On Twitter, I'm MariNaomi. On Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, I'm MariNaomi Art. Don't follow me on TikTok because it's not good.
Gaia,
I was going to get your mic, but I have my own. So to tie it back to the title of this panel, Just Existing is an Act of Protest, boy, is it hard to do stuff. I feel like I'm trying to build the train as it's going at full speed, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I have been working on a world building project for half of my life. I realized I came up with this idea at a summer pre-college program, and I've still been developing it. But it's one of those sci-fi stories where, like, the more things happen in the world, the more I'm like, oh my God, I gotta add that, and I gotta add that. You know, so my dream, my goal is to get to a point where I can be drawing enough every day that I can make my graphic novel series Supercluster a reality. But it feels like I also have to have a social media presence and a Patreon, and, you know, I'm teaching classes, so I have to grade the work and actually be involved in, and I also have to eat, you know? It's like, what? Like, how am I supposed to? I think we all do the job of like 6 to 10 people.
Yes.
And so Supercluster is like my dream, like that will happen one day, but I'm challenging myself to start not with my magnum opus, not with my baby, but with another story called Everything Takes Forever, which is precisely about what I'm talking about here, which is like being neurodivergent, being queer, being black, and having all of these aspirations, right? Because it's so frustrating that being is an act of protest, because I want to do things. I don't want to just be. Like, I want to create things, and because when I do that, I have a tremendous amount of feedback saying this was so important to me, you know what I mean? So it feels like what I was put on this planet to do, but the big obstacle is to actually get it done. So follow me on Instagram. I'm at GAIAW.XYZ. It confuses the shit out of people, but it's I did that because it's also going to be my website when it's online. And I do plan on having a Patreon where I share more of my process and stuff like that. I was making a bunch of Instagram reels, since that's what they want us to do, about my Comics 101 course, and that was getting a lot of positive feedback. So also, I guess I'll become like a Bob Ross ran through a distortion pedal. Yeah, like that's another direction I can see myself going, of like sharing my skills and knowledge with people through videos. So those are the big two things.
Thank you. I was also going to say, like, for everyone here speaking and presenting, you can find their links and stuff on sfzinefest.org. Also, if you're like, wait, which ones? It's like, all right, there's an info on the programming, and then they're linked on there, so you can just find their data on there too.
And I'll just be quick. You can find me at ajuanmance.com, and you can find links to my social media. I'm mostly active on Twitter and Instagram. The things we're supposed to do, I'm supposed to now become more active on Facebook. And so you can look me up by my real name on Facebook. My next, I have my 1001 Black Men, Portraits of Masculinity at the Intersections just came out in July and is at my table. But Tara Madison Avery, head of Stack Deck Press, is also here, and so you can go to Stack Deck Press and find that and other really cool queer and trans comic content. And my next book, Living While Black, Portraits of Everyday Resistance, is going to be out from Chronicle Books this fall. And so keep an eye out for that. I have a couple other book projects that are in the hopper to be out in late 2022 or early 2023. So follow me on social media, and I'm happy. I'll be updating constantly. So yeah, please do.
Thank you all. I was thinking this panel was going to have a lot of hard conversation, so I ended with that conversation. I mean, the question at the end saying, like, we hear enough negativity and criticisms in our lives on a daily basis, but I still want you all to answer this. And I would love for us to end on a positive note. Please say at least one thing you like about yourself. Be kind.
Well, I'll go.
Okay, there you go. It's like,
I like that I'm so freaking cool.
yeah, woo!
No, seriously, like,
No, definitely.
eight-year-old Gaia would be so stoked to know everything I'm doing, right? Like, that's the person who I'm trying to impress. That's
Yeah.
the person who I'm trying to, like, live up to their standards. Because
Yeah.
8-year-old Gaia was really, they knew what they wanted, you know? And so I'm just, like, trying to toe that line.
Thank you.
I guess I like that I fulfilled my childhood aspirations of being the biggest nerd I know, and indeed, I have achieved that.
I like that I'm a nice person.
Woo! Yes. Okay, with that, thank you all so much. You've been wonderful. It was great having this conversation with all of you. I always get stressed about having the panels or even any Q&As and things, and I'm like, it's going to be awkward, it's going to be great. But then it's like, no, wait, we're just having a conversation, and people are sharing stories, and it's wonderful, and the audience is great, and they're here because they want to hear us. They're not here to judge us. So thank you to the audience as well.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. All right, everyone. Go enjoy the rest of the festival outside, buy their works, follow them on social media, and do what you can. Thank you all so much.